So today is a very exciting day, something I've been waiting on really since I bought the shop and have had on order since April. It's now January. It's finally coming today. Any guesses? New garage doors. I could not be more excited. These things are going to be a massive upgrade. I'm going with a garage door from Wayne Dalton from their Thermomark line. And compared to my current roll-top garage door, which is completely uninsulated, these new doors are going to help keep out all of that exterior weather, as well as a lot of the road noise. I'm very close to a really busy noise here, and filming near this door is pretty much impossible. But before the installers come out, obviously, I've got a little work to do because it'd be pretty hard for them to do any work with all of this stuff in the way. So let me go ahead and get that done before they get here. So we got this area cleaned up and the garage door installers showed up and got unloaded. And then they took some measurements because they're obviously going to have to do some framing work to kind of pack out the existing opening to work with this new door. This new garage door is a totally different style of door. Obviously the one I have now is a roll top door, and the new one is kind of more along the lines of what you might be used to at your house. You know, it has tracks and one central spring. So I guess I'll hang tight till they get back and get started working. So the guys got started by removing the old door, and this was definitely not a super simple process. There was a really powerful torsion spring inside of this door, and I think that's what kind of makes garage door installation work not super DIY friendly. In my personal opinion, it's kind of best to leave this stuff up to the professionals. But they used a lift to get the door down because it was obviously super heavy, and as they removed it, they rolled it up using some ratchet straps. I thought that was pretty clever. Finally, they removed the rest of the frame pieces and then they could get started installing the new door. The first step was to add some framing around this door opening, and this is what the tracks will be mounted to. And they basically just added pressure treated boards on each side of the door opening with some concrete anchors. And then they also boxed out kind of the top of the opening, building a sort of quasi header. And this just lowered the height of the door opening to match the size of the new door. Next, they added all of the hardware to the door panels, the hinges and the rollers, and the bottom weather seal. And none of this came installed from the factory, I think for shipping purposes. And then once that was done, they could set the first panel in place and get the tracks set in place based on the size of the panel. And this was one of the things that kind of struck me with this whole process, is that they didn't do a whole lot of measuring. Everything was kind of based on the pieces they had, and by using the panels themselves for reference, they knew the tracks would end up exactly where they needed to be. They attached the tracks to the treated material with some lag screws and then set the next panel in place, making sure they were both level before moving on. They attached the first two panels together using those hinges and then just continued up the door, adding more panels, fastening the tracks in place on either side of the panels, and attaching the hinges to the next panel in line. Before installing the last panel, they added the horizontal tracks, attaching them to the vertical tracks, and the in-bearing brackets, which will hold the shaft in place. Next, they assembled the springs onto the shaft and mounted that whole assembly to the wall, and all of that pressure-treated material they added earlier made that installation process a lot easier so that they didn't have to use a whole bunch of concrete anchors. Once the shaft and springs were in place, they could attach the counterbalance lift cables to a bracket at the bottom of the door and the drums at the top of the door, and this mechanism allows this very heavy door to be lifted by hand in case of power failure, and also helps to reduce the load on the motor. Next, they could tension the torsion springs, and the specific number of turns was actually specified by Wayne Dalton based on the weight of this door, which I thought was pretty interesting. Finally, with all that done, they could get the last panel installed, thankfully, because it was a pretty cold day and there was a lot of very cold air being let in during this whole installation process. And once that panel was in, they could go ahead and partially open the door to set the location of the horizontal tracks. They attached the tracks to the joist using this perforated angle, and I quickly figured out there was not going to be nearly enough clearance above this garage door for a drop ceiling in this area, so the installer set this up so I could come back and add a layer of 1/2-inch plywood and have these horizontal tracks still be level, which ended up working out great. Finally, with the horizontal tracks attached, we could test out the functionality of the door, and even without a motor, this thing was incredibly smooth and you could raise and lower it with one finger. The last things to check off on day one were to install a sliding lock for security, and also the jam seals on the outside of the building, which basically just provide an air seal between the door opening and the door itself. Back for day two, it was time to motorize the door, and they used a jackshaft motor here, which is nice because this style of motor doesn't require additional clearance above the door, so we can maximize the amount of headroom in this door opening. This particular motor had the option of an automatic deadbolt, which, as the name implies, automatically locks the door when it's closed, which is super cool, and it also has a battery backup in case of a power outage. After those were installed, they installed the photo eye sensors for safety, and then finally installed the remote, and then we could test the door out, which was a very exciting moment. Unfortunately, I didn't realize the rope they had attached to temporarily open and close the door would get in the way of the photo eyes, causing the door to go back up right before it finished closing, but the installer showed me where I went wrong, and man, it was so nice to have a motorized garage door finally here in the shop.
That is awesome.
So the installers weren't quite done after doing this first door because, as you guys might know, I have a second door over in the kind of addition area of the shop. And next, they went ahead and knocked that out. And while they're working, let's take a second to talk about the sponsor of this week's video, Harry's. Harry's offers men's grooming essentials, and their shave sets include everything you need for a smooth shave. You might be thinking, but Johnny, you have a beard, and that's obviously true. But when I'm looking to clean up my cheeks or my neckline, there is nothing that gives me a closer shave than a razor. Harry's razors are super comfortable and they last, so my 8th shave is just as good as my first. Their blades are extremely sharp, plus the textured handle is great to use. Their foaming shave gel is also great for sensitive skin like mine, and it left me feeling clean and refreshed. The best part about Harry's is that they're fairly priced, offering premium quality at an affordable price. My starter set included a 5-blade German-engineered razor cartridge, a weighted textured handle, and I got the Ember color, which was super nice looking, some shave cream, and a travel blade cover. Basically everything you need for a smooth shave. So if you're interested in trying Harry's, grab your own starter set for just $5 by using my link, harrys.com/crafted, or checking it out in the video description below. Thanks again to Harry's for sponsoring this week's video, and let's get back to work. So now let's do a little before and after sound test to see how much this reduced the road noise here in the shop. Alright guys, so I just want to do a quick sound test. Camera's about 8 feet from the door behind me. My mouth is about 2 feet from the camera. There is a busy road out here as well as a car wash across the street. So you can imagine between those two things, there is a lot of noise. So let me just be quiet for a second. I don't know how much the camera is going to pick it up, but let's go to after and see exactly how much better this place sounds now. All right, so same settings, 2 feet from the camera, about 8 feet from this wall, and let's just listen. So I don't know on camera, but in person, it sounds much, much quieter, and best of all, it's a lot more comfortable in here. Those metal doors used to just radiate heat in the summer and would be freezing cold in the winter, and now these doors just feel normal. I think my mini split units are probably having to work a lot less hard. And the other massive bonus is that these are obviously motorized. I can open them from my truck. I can control them from my phone, and it's just amazing. So with the garage doors in, now it was time to tackle the ceiling above this garage door. Thankfully, the guys from the Perkins Builder Brothers were here working on the drop ceiling, and it is always a lot more fun when those guys are around.
I've been sitting here watching Johnny and the guys work on this plywood ceiling because this garage door won't allow the drop ceiling over here. And I've been sick. That's why I'm just sitting here and I'm still a little sick. And I can tell Johnny just wants this done and he's not gonna film it to the full extent that he would normally. So I had to step in and get up off my chair and film a little bit of this because it's interesting. I think it should make it in the video. So I stole Johnny's phone and they're gonna keep working and cutting stuff. Piece of cake. Needs 6-foot arms. Why are you sweating so much? So this is interesting though. Right here we had a joist that has a knot and a big crack, and they put this 2x4 in, beat the bottom in to where it jacked that thing back up straight, and put a big 2x10 scab, bunch of GRKs. Wow. We're using 3/8 CD, is that right? Because it was $20 instead of the, what was the other?
45.
What rating was it though? It was a BC sanded. Half the price, and it really doesn't matter for the ceiling, I don't think. The garage door when it's open is gonna cover all this. You sure you need to go CrossFit today? I mean, this is looking like CrossFit-ish.
So they will cancel my membership.
So this is smart. They're going to take off, and they already did, this track where it mounts and go under it with the plywood. So you don't have to cut around it. It looks nice and clean. But I wasn't thinking about that when y'all started. I was like,
I don't think it needs to be attached on that end, really.
Yeah.
It's
Did you mark the left and right?
Yeah.
Where that, okay.
Off the wall.
Okay. What kind of door is this?
Jackshaft.
Is that the real name?
Can't say that.
Okay.
So we wrapped up the ceiling in this area by boxing in the area above the spring assembly, and we had to add some blocking here and install the plywood higher in this area for clearance. And then I went around and added some 2x2 trim around this entire perimeter to clean things up prior to painting. And one major benefit of installing this trim was it really helped us straighten out this pretty wavy plywood. Once the trim was in, I went ahead and caulked everything, and I used Big Stretch here, and this has become one of my favorite caulks for this type of thing because I know there's going to be a lot of movement in this building as I've seen in other areas, and having a elastomeric, a very stretchy caulk will really help to prevent cracking down the line. Finally, it was time to get everything painted, including basically this entire half of the shop, and I went ahead and vacuumed the walls, covered all the outlets, and got everything prepped, and then sprayed on a coat of primer, which is where we're at right now. And one thing that really helped the painting go a lot more quickly this time was using this cardboard spray shield with this spray shield holder. These are really simple to use, just slides into the holder, and once it gets loaded up with paint, you just throw it away. And so I had another metal spray shield I had used when I painted the tiny house, and every time it got loaded with paint, I'd have to go wash it off. And so this works a lot better in my opinion. These are like 20 cents each or something like that. You could actually just cut these out of your own cardboard that, you know, you're getting from Amazon or whatever. And I think this is a really good solution. So obviously there's still some more painting left to do. I need to put the final coat of paint on these walls here, and then I need to start the arduous process of painting all of these beams, which is definitely going to be a pain, but once that's done, I can really start getting all of my tools set up, so that's super exciting. So if you guys don't want to miss all those future videos, go ahead and get subscribed and ring the notification bell. I'll have links to all the tools and materials I use down in the video description below, as always. And last, if you want to support me, I sell merch. I have plans available for a lot of my woodworking projects, and I have both Patreon and YouTube members set up, so go check one of those out. All right, thanks for watching, y'all, and until next week, happy building.